Welcome to Beyond the Template, the More Than Just Talk podcast, created by me, Caroline Amelie, a writer, artist, counselor, and learning designer. This week's episode lands under the full moon, and honestly, I'm feeling it. Between listing my home for sale and running on too little sleep, I'm showing up tired but real. Still, there's light to share. I've gathered a few glimmers of good news from around the world for you all to remind you that not everything is on fire. Then we'll move into this week's Expander of the Week story featuring surrealist painter Remedios Varo, a woman who refused to stop creating even when war and exile tried to silence her. And finally, I'll share a behind-the-scenes update on my own creative project, how I've been mapping the skills and knowledge we all need to bring our work to life, and what comes next as we make those ideas practical and real. Because even when the world feels heavy, there's still art to make, stories to tell, and small ways to keep showing up. Hello, lovely humans. Thank you so much for joining me. So how did the full moon treat everyone? I stopped sleeping entirely. Today is day 4 of not sleeping throughout the night. Only on a couple of hours off and on. This is typical for me during full moons, but this one also gave me a bunch of mood swings, which is so fun. From a deep sadness that I couldn't shake for hours the day before to waking up immediately soaked with rage the day of, which has sort of continued throughout the week, to be honest. I think I'm okay now, even though I am still very sleep deprived. I celebrated the full moon with listing my home for sale. Talk about a release, right? A release is what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to bring in, you're supposed to get rid of during full moons. I am pretty scared. This is the biggest leap I've ever taken. I don't know what's going to happen. I am doing this during a time where everything in the world feels unsafe. But I know if I don't do it, I will be in the same place creatively a year from now. Much of my life has been like this. I'm no stranger to doing scary things alone. It comes with the territory of not having a close support system in place. My purpose in life might be to fall on my face just so I can tell people about the experience for their benefit. But seriously, maybe that is it. Last week we dove into the inspiring story of Charlie Chaplin. I spent most of the episode on him, as many don't know much about who he was and what he went through. So much of history is lost when we stop sharing stories. I created a post on this for social media, actually, on Tuesday. When we share stories with one another, it triggers a response called neurocoupling or mirroring. This is when it can feel like the story you are hearing is your own story as well, and it can trigger feelings in us. Emotion and the senses are the best ways to engage with long-term memory, so you can see how important storytelling is when we learn. This is why I tell stories in my podcast. This is a More Than Just Talk podcast. For anyone new, we're all about action, myself included. I'm learning and growing alongside you and sharing each failure, success, and pivot. I hope you will engage with us as well and give me feedback on how I can become better at this. One of the first actions I took in creating this podcast, outside of researching for 2 months, was writing my own theme song, which I performed and recorded myself. This can be heard at the end. If you haven't heard it yet, it's short and sweet. Okay, it's time for the good news of the week. Links for the following news announcements can be found in my blog and on YouTube if you're curious to read more. Researchers at the University of Arizona developed a solar drying tower to combat food waste. By the way, it has 0 carbon footprint. Supporting universities through funding supports one's community, country, and the world. A Jamaican student invented a self-sanitizing door handle for hospitals and then received an award from their prime minister. Shout out to the state I'm living in. Autism Friendly Restaurant in Cornelius, North Carolina, USA is aiming to make everyone feel welcome while dining out. And finally, I was so thrilled to see that Reading Rainbow is returning. If you don't know about Michael Threets, you have missed out. He is a perfect reason for keeping social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram. The first time I saw one of his videos, years ago now, I was immediately calm, happy, and centered. It was the same feeling I got watching Blue's Clues with OG Steve back in the 1990s. Michael is a librarian. His sole desire is to share stories from his days working in the children's section and how delighted he would be to see children connecting to books, to reading, to their imaginations, and to themselves. He is simply a treat of a human. I will be putting his handles in the podcast description if you want to check him out. So now Michael will be the host of Reading Rainbow, and I couldn't be happier for him and for this generation's children. He's got the same sparkle as Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross, and of course, LeVar Burton. It really lifted me up to see this happening. This is the sort of thing that can truly make an impact on a child growing up. This, to me, is the best sort of learning through media consumption. Pivoting hard from Michael's long journey to success through genuine heart and authenticity is my expander of the week. An artist who I discovered during my undergrad years. Her work caught my attention in being both scientific and surreal, a combination any Aquarius would love. Think imagery from Pan's Labyrinth, Neverending Story, or The Dark Crystal. It's weird and fantastical just like my soul, and I am obsessed. This week's expander is Remedios Varo. Maria de los Remedios Alicia Rodrigo Vara y Yoranga, but to the world, simply Remedios Varo, was born on December 16, 1908, in the quiet Catalan town of Angles in northeastern Spain. Her life would span continents, wars, exile, mysticism, and art so luminous and strange that today she is rightly called one of the great surrealists of the 20th century. And yet, her story is not only one of imaginative flight, but of persistence against dislocation, political tempest, and the challenge of claiming a place to create when the world seems determined to push you aside. Varo came from a family that in certain ways offered advantages. Her father was a hydraulic engineer, a man comfortable with geometry, drafting, and technical precision. From her earliest years, he taught her to draw, giving her a foundation in structure and visual discipline. Because of his work, the family moved frequently across Spain and even to North Africa, exposing young Remedios to shifting landscapes and the sense of being between worlds, a feeling that would later surface in her art. She attended a strict Catholic convent school, but her mind roamed far beyond its walls. She had devoured adventure novels by Jules Verne and Edgar Allan Poe, along with mystical and occult writings. These early fascinations with science, magic, and exploration became the language of her imagination. In Madrid, she studied formally at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts of San Fernando, earning credentials to teach drawing. She married a fellow student, Gerardo Lizarraga, and later joined avant-garde artistic circles in Barcelona. There, she became part of Lógico Bobista, a small surrealist influence group whose name literally meant fear of logic. The movement sought to free the imagination from rational constraints, a philosophy that resonated deeply with her. Then came the Spanish Civil War. Beginning in 1936, the war tore Spain apart, pitting the democratically elected Republican government against the fascist forces of General Francisco Franco. Like many intellectuals and artists of her time, Varo sympathized with the Republic's anti-fascist ideals. She met Benjamin Paret, a French poet and surrealist who had come to Spain to support the Republican cause. Their partnership became both romantic and artistic. When the Republic fell, the two fled to Paris in 1937, only to face another political storm as World War II approached. In 1940, when the Nazis invaded France, Varo and Paret were arrested, partly due to his political activism, and later released. But they would not remain in Europe. By the end of 1941, they had fled across southern France and secured passage to Mexico City, joining a wave of artists and intellectuals escaping fascism. Varo was now in exile. Franco's dictatorship in Spain barred her return. She had lost her home, her country, and a brother to war. Yet she carried with her a quiet resilience, a conviction that creativity could still offer refuge and meaning even when the world burned. In Mexico City, Varo found community among other exiled surrealists, including Leonora Carrington, Katie Horna, and Wolfgang Palin. Together, they created a circle of artists who reimagined the boundaries between art, spirituality, and science. For years, Varo supported herself through illustration, advertising work, and costume design. Only in the 1950s did she begin painting full-time, producing the works that would define her legacy. Her paintings fuse alchemy and physics, dream and logic. Figures in flowing robes navigate impossible interiors, operate strange instruments, or build worlds from sound and light. In one work, Creation of the Birds, 1957, a woman-like being sits at a desk, transforming starlight and paint into living creatures, a metaphor for artistic creation itself. Varo's worlds are not escapist fantasies. They are meditations on exile, loneliness, and transformation. Her art suggests that even when we are uprooted, creation can reweave the threads of meaning and belonging. Remedios Varo died unexpectedly in 1963 at the age of 54, so young. But her legacy continues to grow, inspiring artists, dreamers, and exiles across generations. Her work speaks to anyone who has felt displaced by the world and yet compelled to keep imagining. She reminds us that art made in darkness can still bring light, and that creating isn't about waiting for calm skies, but finding ways to weave the storm itself into beauty. In times like ours, when the world feels fractured and hope feels fragile, Remedios Varo's life whispers, keep showing up, keep making. Even in exile, the imagination can remain free. Isn't she great? You really have to look up some of her pieces. I will have links about her this week in the podcast description. I did an entire term paper on her, and I was just delighted looking at her work online. I wish I could see it in person. It would be a dream. All right, let's turn it back to everybody else. So how have we been doing on our projects this week? Any progress? For my new listeners, my project this season is to try to build a social community of creative individuals who are driven, hold vision, carry similar values, inspire and support one another, and love exploring ideas, cultures, and places together, similar to what Varo did when she went to Mexico City. So far, I have identified needs, problems, characteristics, and traits in context, and am now working through tasks that might be important to consider for myself as creator and for my audience in order for my project to be successful. So here are my answers to last week's reflection questions on where I am in my own creative journey. In terms of identified needs, I have some major gaps in my own skills and knowledge to complete my project. Comparative needs. Do I have gaps? Yes. What skills and knowledge should I have? The ability to curate a branded identity for this group, otherwise the lines are too messy. And I am still floundering with my own branded identity. So I'd not thought about branding once, not one time until I started my business. So this is all new to me, and I'm sort of blundering my way through everything. Felt needs. Do I have gaps in skills and knowledge? No, I don't have any here, because being raised in an atmosphere where I had to be hyper aware of the emotional state of those around me, now I'm great at picking up on the experience of others through deep empathy. I just need to be able to directly connect with them to do this sort of extension of self practice. Express needs. Do I have gaps? Yes. What should I have? The ability to network with more individuals who might be interested in this sort of community. Networking in general is awful for an introvert who thrives on weird and deep conversations. I have to figure out how to manage my energy in these sorts of spaces so I can find those aligned. Anticipated needs. Do I have gaps? Yes. What should I have? The ability to discern the best directions for building this community, whether it be to offer online or in-person small groups or larger events, what those groups should focus on, how to ensure quality interactions, how to motivate others to join and participate, and how to raise capital to continue expanding into the future. That's me. So, on where my audience might be when engaging with my work or this group for the first time. In terms of what my audience already knows, well, they should already know what they would bring to a group like this and what they're seeking from others. They should also have an understanding of how belonging to this sort of group benefits them and serves their community. And finally, and I mentioned this in episode 3, they need to know how to be themselves while connecting with others through self-awareness and emotional intelligence. The last thing I want is another group where people are wearing masks and trying to navigate through filtering themselves. But also, this group should not include someone who tries to take over with their own agenda and perspective. Individuals in my group need to be able to advocate for their ideas within the context of seeking someone with complementary skill sets or supportive ideas. They need to be able to take action towards change through creative solutions. They need to hold their own in group conversations. This is not a place for someone to sit and observe and not participate. They need to be able to seek out opportunities for the group as well. I'm hoping that this will serve as a community-led and philanthropic organization. Finally, they need to be able to hold space for others, so belonging is never in question for an individual member. All hands on deck. In terms of the vehicles of communication that I need to use as part of building this community for my audience, my social media platforms and this podcast, which connects to my blog and will eventually connect with Substack, I just have to fucking remember to do it, are my vehicles. And each include facts, historical stories, interesting bits about the brain, etc., concept and principles, learning and experience design best practices, interpersonal skills. The whole point of my content is to help myself be seen so others can find me and find each other through intentionality, authenticity, and empathy, and attitudes, as this group should hold similar values and approaches to the mission. Procedures are even a vehicle. Since I've broken the first season of this podcast up into individual stages of design practice. Not sure about the next season. I have no idea what's going to inspire me in a year. So that's where I'm at. And I can see that I have some work cut out in front of me, but that's always a good thing in my opinion. Having direction makes my heart happy. Well, here's to another week of work. It's time to grab your notebook to hear your new list of honey you better do's. At this point, we have started considering how tasks require ourselves and our audiences to hold specific skills and knowledge. That's what I just recapped for my project. But now it's time to apply these literally and practically. This coming week, together, we will be considering the actual procedures and tasks needed for our projects to succeed. These reflection questions, it's just 3 this time, along with the full transcript, can be found in my blog, which is linked for you in the podcast description. All right, here are our reflection questions of the week. What does the audience do? Really use your empathy and imagination with this one. Imagine your work in a perfect world. How is the audience interacting with it? What does the audience need to know to do? How do you communicate to the audience what to do, how to do it, and what to expect from their experience? For example, if your work is in a gallery, are they given audio directions, a map, a wall decal summary, a pamphlet? What should and should not be included? What cues, using the senses, inform the audience that they have reached certain points in their experience of your work? If your work is a standalone piece, this may not be relevant, but I hope my audience thinks big. Imagine you have filled a gallery space with your own work. How will the audience move through the space? How will they know they have taken the time to experience each of your pieces before moving on? Here's to all of us continuing even when it feels like too much, because let's be real, it does. Here's also to deciding to keep trying to put ourselves out in the world so we can connect, collaborate, and create change. Here's to our community of makers and shakers. I sincerely appreciate each of you, and I hope you'll consider being part of the community I'm building. That being said, I am practicing what I preach, so if you have any feedback on how to make this the best podcast out there, please email me at camelieleboeuf@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Template. You're doing great. Keep it up. Keep it creative. My name is Caroline Amelie Leboeuf. I have a degree in art and in counseling, and also professional level certificates in educational advising and learning design and technology. Roles I have carried include illustrator, photographer, writer, traveler, mentor, instructor, and most recently, entrepreneur. If you are curious to learn further about the work I offer my clients, check out camelidesigns.com. That's camelidesigns.com.